Most people treat their life like a checklist. Graduate, get a job, climb the ladder, step by step, slow, predictable. But students at Harvard University often do something completely different. They treat their life like a startup. Not a career plan, a startup. And that single mental shift creates an advantage so massive it almost feels unfair. Startups do not follow rigid paths. They run experiments. They test ideas. They pivot constantly. And Harvard students are trained to do the exact same thing with their careers, their learning, even their identities. But here's the strange part. Most people think elite students succeed because they are smarter. Wrong. What actually separates them is the system they use to design their lives. 3 principles. Principles borrowed straight from startup culture. I'm going to show you exactly what they are. And by the end of this video, you will understand why some people accelerate their lives 10 years ahead of everyone else. Chapter 1, the experiment mindset. Most people try to make the perfect decision. Perfect major, perfect job, perfect career. They sit there analyzing, overthinking, paralyzed. Harvard students do something completely different. They run experiments. Startup founders never assume they know what works. They launch small tests, fast, cheap, constantly. This idea became famous through the lean startup method created by entrepreneur Eric Ries. His philosophy is simple. Do not plan forever, test, measure, adapt. And Harvard students apply this exact model to life decisions. Instead of asking, what should I do for the rest of my life? They ask a different question. What is the smallest experiment I can run this month? Internships, side projects, research labs, student startups, clubs. They sample dozens of environments before committing to one. But here is the key insight. Experiments destroy fear because experiments are temporary. You are not choosing a lifelong identity. You are just testing something. Psychologists call this low-stakes exploration. Research from Stanford University shows that people who frame career decisions as experiments experience less anxiety and better long-term outcomes. Most people try to predict the future. Experimenters build it. But there is a problem with experiments. Experiments fail a lot, which brings us to the second advantage. Chapter 2, failure is data. Most people treat failure like a verdict. You fail a test, you failed. You try a project and it does not work. You quit. But startup founders see failure differently. Failure is information, not a verdict, just data. At Harvard Business School, this thinking appears everywhere. Students study companies that collapsed, products that failed, strategies that broke, because failure contains insight. Startup founders expect most experiments to fail. That is normal. They only need one experiment to succeed. Harvard students copy this exact philosophy. They launch clubs, projects, apps, businesses, research studies. Some crash immediately. Good. They just learned something faster than everyone else. Psychologist Carol Dweck calls this the growth mindset. The belief that abilities are not fixed. They evolve through feedback. And failure produces the most powerful feedback in existence. Think about it. If something works immediately, you learn very little. But if something breaks, your brain becomes obsessed with fixing it. Your attention increases. Your curiosity increases. Your learning increases. That is why entrepreneurs fail repeatedly before succeeding. Take Mark Zuckerberg, for example. Before building Facebook, he created several experimental projects. Many disappeared. They were not the final product. They were prototypes, exactly how startups evolve. And Harvard students follow the same playbook. Instead of waiting for the perfect opportunity, they prototype their life. But here is the problem, though. Experiments and failure only work if you constantly learn from them. Most people fail once and repeat the same mistake forever. Which brings us to the third principle. Chapter 3, life is an iteration loop. Startup founders use a cycle called build, measure, learn. Build something, measure results, learn from feedback, repeat, over and over. The fastest of startups run this loop hundreds of times per year. Harvard students apply the same loop to their development, semester by semester, project by project. They run life iterations. For example, semester 1, join 3 clubs. Start a small project, test interest. Measure what excites you, semester 2. Double down on the best opportunity. Drop everything else, semester 3. Launch something bigger, research. Startup, leadership role, iteration, iteration, iteration. Professor Cal Newport describes this process as career capital accumulation. Instead of chasing passion, you build rare skills. Then opportunities start chasing you. Most people wait for clarity. Iteration creates clarity. Because action generates feedback, and feedback reveals direction. But here is the hidden advantage. Iteration compounds. Small experiments stack into massive transformation. A student who launches 20 experiments during college learns more than someone who launches one safe career path. This is why some graduates seem unstoppable. They are not smarter. They simply ran more iterations. But there is still one problem. Experiments require energy, focus, motivation, and most people burn out quickly. Which leads to the fourth principle. Chapter 4. Personal operating systems. Startup founders do not rely on motivation. They rely on systems, daily routines, workflows, checklists, processes, system scale, motivation fades. Harvard students build personal operating systems, morning routines, study frameworks, networking systems, learning protocols. Instead of random productivity, they build repeatable processes. For example, instead of saying I will study more, they design a learning system, active recall, spaced repetition, teaching concepts, Cognitive psychologist Robert Bjork discovered that memory strengthens when learning is effortful. Elite students use methods that make learning harder. Because difficulty improves retention. Average students reread notes. Elite students test themselves. Average students highlight textbooks. Elite students teach others. Same hours, completely different outcomes. Systems create leverage. But systems also create something more powerful. Consistency, and consistency builds momentum, which leads to the fifth advantage. Chapter 5, Opportunity Density. Here is something most people do not realize. Harvard students are surrounded by opportunity. Professors, researchers, entrepreneurs, investors. But environment alone is not enough. You still have to activate it. And startup thinking does exactly that. Startup founders constantly talk to customers, partners, mentors, investors. They build networks through action. Harvard students do the same thing. They launch projects. Then they recruit collaborators, which naturally expands their network. Creativity researcher Keith Sawyer discovered something fascinating. Innovation rarely happens alone. It happens inside networks of collaboration. When you run experiments, you meet people. Those people introduce more people. And suddenly opportunities multiply. This is called opportunity density. The more experiments you run, the more doors appear. Most people wait for doors. Experimenters build hallways. But here is the thing though. Even with experiments, iteration, and systems, there is still one problem. Most people design their lives backwards. They chase goals instead of designing environments. And environments control behavior, which leads to the final principle. Chapter 6, Designing the Environment. Startup founders obsess over environment, office culture, team dynamics, product feedback loops, because environment shapes outcomes. Harvard students often design environments that force growth. They join intense communities, startup incubators, research labs, competitive clubs. Why? Because the environment raises expectations. If everyone around you is building something, you build something. If everyone around you is learning fast, you learn faster. Psychologists call this social contagion. Behavior spreads through groups. Studies from Harvard Medical School show that habits like productivity, health, and happiness spread through social networks. Your environment literally rewires your behavior. Startup founders know this. They build teams carefully. Harvard students build environments carefully. An environment shapes identity. But here is the hidden truth. You do not need Harvard to do this. You just need the startup mindset. Run experiments, treat failure as data, iterate constantly, build systems, create opportunity density, design powerful environments. That is the entire playbook. And once you understand it, you stop waiting for life to happen. You start building it. But here is the problem though. Even if you design your life like a startup, most people still learn too slowly. They run experiments, but they do not absorb lessons fast enough, which means they repeat mistakes that faster learners avoid. That is why I made another video breaking down the learning system elite students use to absorb information twice as fast. Once you understand that system, your experiments accelerate, your iterations multiply, and suddenly your life moves faster than everyone else. Watch that video next. It might be the most unfair advantage of all.